Okay, we're now live. So, Peter, I cannot tell you. So, firstly, anybody joining, apologies for the delay. Nothing like technology when it comes to Stephen Brown being involved. And I had to get Luke's help as well. But, Peter, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you as a guest today. You have been a massive, massive influence in my life. Starting off at Vistage with a highly effective marketing plan as a speaker. And I was talking about a lady today about it. And she was saying, yeah, Peter Knight, unbelievable. Hemp has massively helped me. And then obviously getting you involved at Green and Company and the influence you've had in my career has been absolutely phenomenal. So I'm so grateful for you to come on and spend lunchtime with us and the audience. And by the looks of things, you're incredibly popular because I've never had so many questions from people and so many shares.
Well, thank you for those very kind words, Stephen, and my apologies as well. The technology, you're taking the blame. It's my end of the technology is fault. So apologies to everybody for it wasn't Stephen keeping you waiting. It was me. So apologies for that. But and that's very kind of you to say so, Stephen. And and congratulations to you first of all. Obviously I've known you now for many years and seen you transition from being Green and Co, where you had a great role there into building your own business. And I know we have several members of our various organisations who are clients of yours and clients of mine, and I know they hold you in very high regard, and I know you're doing a lot of good work. So well done you on what you're doing.
Thank you. It's a mutual appreciation club today. So thank you. So just welcome a few people. So hi Abigail, thank you for joining us. Hi Chris. Hi Luke, thanks for your help as well. Two kings of estate agents, Andy Overman, looking forward to this one. So for people that don't know you, Peter, and hello Edwina, joining from Newry County Down.
Hello Edwina. Well, hi Edwina.
Yeah, so Edwina was the lady we were talking about earlier about highly effective marketing plan.
Right.
And Edwina and I were discussing this, and professionals, all professionals, and you're an incredible professional, was once a beginner. Okay, and you've gone on and you've had the most fantastic and continue to put on the most incredible events. So for people that don't know you, who is Peter Knight and what's your story, and how have you become, in my opinion, the best trainer, coach, mentor in the UK, please?
Well, that's very kind again. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so I'll give you the condensed version. I once asked somebody actually that same question, and he started off by saying, "Well, I was made milk monitor when I was 5 at school," and I thought, no, I don't want to go quite that far back, so I won't do that. No, I started my first job as an estate agent. I had a window of opportunity from taking A levels and until the results came out, because I knew the results wouldn't be very good. And so my moment was, I've taken 3 A levels as opposed to waiting till after the results when I would have to acknowledge that I didn't pass 3 A levels. Anyway, I managed to get a job as a negotiator, or trainee negotiator to be accurate, at an estate agency called Samuel Rains and Son, Heel Green office, basically in very close proximity to Manchester Airport. And I learned very quickly in those days that you had to time your viewings really carefully about the slots to avoid the planes and things. Anyway, from there, I was lucky enough to get promoted to being a manager of the Handforth office, and then I left there. Today, it's part of Reed's Rains, the Rains bit, but it was Samuel Rains and Co. It was a private company back then. And then I joined Barratt, the house builder, and had several years with them, and managed to work my way up to becoming sales director for one of their regions. I was in the East Midlands region. But I really loved estate agency, and I applied for a role with a company called Jackson Property Services in the early 80s, and became new homes director, and then eventually became group managing director. And when I joined the business, there were 12 offices, and when I left the business, we had over 100.
Wow.
But the point at which we sold the business, because I had a financial involvement with the business as well, we had 30 branches and departments, and it was a great time. The 8 years, it was an amazing time. And we pioneered a lot of things. We were the first to call ourselves property services rather than estate agents. We were the first to open 7 days a week. We went 9 to 7 initially, and then 9 to 9, 7 days a week. We had branded cars. We had an 8,000 square foot training centre, and many other things which at the time were quite pioneering. And I like to think that we did some great stuff. And of course, I got to work with some amazing people, Peter Jackson and Alan Robinson in particular. And it's great for me that actually Alan's son, Tony, is a member of the Property Academy. And so I often find myself passing on pearls of wisdom from his dad that he passed to me. So he goes, yeah, my dad said that. I go, yeah, he did. Yeah. And then I got to a point, Stephen, where unfortunately Halifax, who bought us, and I didn't see eye to eye. I wasn't probably the right person for a corporate environment, and so I left and set up my own marketing agency called Phoenix, and we specialised in property marketing. And then one day I was reading about House Builders Awards, and I suddenly thought, you know what, there isn't an estate agents awards that I'm aware of. And I Googled it, and basically there had been one. The NAA had done one, I think, with Nationwide, actually, and it had gone bust. So I thought, you know what? Estate agents get such a bad press. I'm going to set up an awards just for estate agents. So I set up, almost 20 years ago, set up estate agency events. And, now it's grown into this enormous thing called the EA Masters and the Best Estate Agent Guide Awards, which we run each year. In fact, don't mind me plugging it.
Not at all. I was going to plug it for you, but you go ahead and you do it.
Well, it's on the 8th of October, and it's going to be absolutely massive. We've got 28 hours of content that we're going to be delivering through 4 streams. It's going to be bigger than anything we've ever done before, and therefore it's daunting and exciting in equal measure. But no, the situation is that we've got a fantastic event. We're continuing with the awards. The assessment has been completed, and we'll be announcing which branches have made it into the Best Estate Agent Guide quite shortly. And then in addition, of course, to that, I run the Property Academy. We've got 136 members. Typically, the profile is business owners or senior directors, and we work with them. We have peer groups similar to yourself. We have up to 15 members in each of the peer groups. We meet several times a year. And we also bring in our world-class speakers. So it's very much led by people who are expert in their fields to help estate agents to become better businessmen and women, as opposed to purely just really good estate agents. And that's really our raison d'etre, is helping people to become better business people. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
Can I plug you a little bit more? Am I allowed to do that? Yeah. Every Monday you produce a fantastic email that comes out as well. So if people haven't subscribed to that, please do, because it is inspirational. I think it's 4 eyes, and it really is exceptional.
Thank you, Steve. The 4 eyes is actually one of the 4 eyes is inspirational. The idea is it stands for information, insight, ideas, and inspiration. And I seek to try and make sure that at least one, ideally 2, 3, or 4 of those things are in there, and it's free. And we've been doing it now, crikey, about 7 years, I think it is. And I'm not saying no topic has been repeated, but I write each one of them completely individually. I've never recycled any of the content. Yeah, thank you for that. 6,000 subscribers now, so please feel free to join. Unfortunately, with GDPR, you have to sign up for it. I'd happily just give it out for free. Or you can, if you want to be anonymous, you can access it on the website as well, on propertyacademy.co.uk, and you don't have to register, you can just get it. So whichever way you prefer to digest it. If you want the email to come to you, you have to register, it's free, and then we can send it to you without that GDPR rubbish.
It's brilliant. So you've got Asad Riaz, the Godfather, calling you the Godfather of UK Estate Agency. Shell, hello to you both. Michael Netterton, great to see you both. Peter Knight and Stephen Brown. Andy Overman with a smile and a wink, who's a current #1 agent in the UK. I think they could well be on this. And Edwina, so excited and can't wait for the EA Masters. And just talking about that, I mean, you must have met I know you have met, because I've been to all the events, and the speakers you have been sensational. So who's been the biggest influence on you in your career and on your life?
That's actually quite an easy question to answer, because Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, was the single biggest influencer on my life, without question, still is today. I don't think a day goes by where I don't quote him in one way, shape or form. And I was extremely lucky from a timing perspective that I was actually coached directly by Stephen.
Wow.
So I had the opportunity on 2 occasions to be coached directly by him. And that was again something which, you know, I look back on it now and think, my gosh, how lucky was I? And I qualified to be one of his sort of master facilitators of his program, and actually he wrote 2. He wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He also wrote a piece of work called The 4 Roles of Leadership. And both of them are fundamentally important. So I've been lucky, Stephen, to meet an awful lot of people. I can't wait. We haven't announced it yet. I can't wait to tell you who the headline is going to be.
Oh, you can't give us an exclusive now, can you? Peter Knight.
No, we haven't signed we've verbally agreed. We haven't signed the contract. Otherwise, I would. But until I've signed the contract, it would be premature.
No, I understand.
We have got somebody who is extraordinary, and I mean properly extraordinary. Attending, so I'm excited about that. But Stephen will always be for me. And I met his son actually. I went to the Wobie event last year, the World of Business International event, and his son was speaking. And I had a great opportunity to actually chat to him about his dad. And I asked him, I said, "What was he really like?" He said he was even better, you know, as a dad. He said he was even better than you'd imagine, which was great, because I didn't want to hear. Actually, it was all sort of smoke and mirrors. He was fundamentally a top bloke. So yeah, and people often ask me, you know, I'm a serial reader. I've got over 3,000 books in my so-called library, which sounds very grand, doesn't it? The room with my books. And that is my absolute number one go-to. And I say to people, read that first and then come back to me and we'll have a conversation about which other genres you might be interested in. But 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is always my number one go-to.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about books, actually. So I'm going to ask you then, what's in your top 5? Obviously, that's number 1.
Okay, so it depends on what the topic is. But I mean, if I take typically, say, for business owners in a state agency, which books would I strongly recommend that they read? So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which, by the way, is a turgid read, but it's brilliant content. It's brilliant content, but it's awful. It's an awful read. Jim Collins is perhaps best known for Good to Great, but he wrote several other books, one of which actually often falls under the radar, because it's the only book, for some reason, where he actually credits himself or styles himself as James Collins, but it's the same guy, and it's called Beyond Entrepreneurship. And it's really, I think, a really outstanding read. A book that I was heavily involved with is another big influence on me, was a man called Professor Robert Cialdini. He wrote a book called Influence, The Science and Practice of Influence. And I actually worked with Bob and his team to translate this sort of academic study into commercial materials that could be used. And so Bob's book Influence is right up there. How many have I got through now?
You got one more.
Okay, crikey, where do I go to for that one
but
more?
Mind you, Assad, I'm sure, is going to fight you in a minute and come up with his list as well.
Well, Assad is a prolific reader, and we often share suggestions. Okay, because it's staring at me, because I've actually had it out the other day for something, I'm going to say The Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, which is I think for this moment in time is really important. Because I do believe it's not just about having great people and great systems, it's also about having great checklists to make sure that those systems are properly acted on. So yeah, that would be there's those. But you know, Stephen, we could talk.
You got 3,000 to tell me about and tell the audience about. So no, I know, but that, I mean, look, success leaves clues, and obviously you read a lot, Assad read a lot. You know, for people that aren't reading, what's the benefits? Why should they be feeding their mind and expanding themselves, and, you know, really getting, look, obviously it helps. And, you know, I mean, to get to see and be in front and work with Stephen Covey and Robert Cialdini, wow, amazing.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, I could have mentioned, my NLP work as well. And so I had the good fortune to be coached directly by Richard Bandler on a one-on-one basis, which was, again, just, and that was all through a man called Ed Percival, who's sadly no longer with us, who was an extraordinarily talented individual who joint authored NLP. But, look, what happens, I think, in life is that you surround yourself by good people, and you put yourself out there, and stuff happens. And I can't explain it really, but it just does. And so, I remember going to ARIC for the first time in 2003 and speaking there, and meeting John McGrath, and then bringing him over. I brought him over to the UK that year, and so from John, I sort of then met Fiona Blaney, who's become a great friend in the property management and letting space, and then from there met Dean Mackey and Josh Vegan, of course, who's one of my close friends, and Josh and I did so much work together. One thing leads to another, Stephen. You must have found this, yourself. That so I think from a reading perspective, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was speaking at NAR, and I was staying in a hotel in San Francisco, and I was having breakfast one morning early, and who was sitting there? Malcolm Gladwell, who was on the And you know what? I thought, I'll be all American here. So I went over. I said, Mr. Gladwell, my name is Peter Knight. I've flown all the way from London to hear you. I mean, that was true. I'd also flown to speak to the audience as well. And I said, could I just join you for a quick cup of coffee? And we had 5 minutes. I mean, it wasn't the most memorable engagement, but the point I'm making is you'll be amazed how often people will help you. And if you put yourself out, I wrote to several people when I wrote my book, and just asked them if they'd be kind enough to leave a comment or give me a review or whatever. And somebody from your Green & Co days, Julian Richer,
yes,
Sounds, who was a non-exec great friend of David Pollock's, author of The Richer Way and several other books. Well, Julian wrote me a wonderful intro for my book. Marshall Goldsmith, who wrote the New York Times bestseller, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I met him. He did. Tom Peters, of all people. I met Tom at an event. Crikey, Steve. The names, they just go on and on. But it's about putting yourself out there and being out there, meeting people, giving without necessarily expecting to get anything back. But here's the thing: you do get stuff back. That's what's so remarkable. So yeah, it's all of those things.
So that's great. So there's people here that are watching this thinking, great, Peter, it's fantastic. And what I love is you've actually physically gone and asked. And, I'm so grateful you're here today, because actually, there's comments on here, you're a legend, you're the godfather. And that's how I feel to you. And so for me to have you on my Lunchtime Learnings is an absolute pleasure, and I'm totally grateful. But there's people on here that actually are afraid of asking. What advice can you give them to just get started, to take that leap? Because we started at the, all professionals were once beginners. So you were once a beginner, and now you're the most incredible, successful entrepreneur, businessman who's been with, the likes of, as you said, Stephen Covey's of this world, which is incredible. But like me, you've got the same blood. You're human. So how do you overcome that fear?
Oh, well, thank you again, Steve, for those kind words. I mean, look, I'm going to quote Tony Robbins, who's not somebody actually that I gravitate to very often, truth be told. I mean, he's very clever, and there's been a massive influence on lots and lots of people, but he didn't really chime with me. But one thing he did say, I remember reading one of his books, and he said about speaking, and he said he would turn up in the early days for anything. Anybody wanted him, he would go. He looked on it, it didn't matter what it is, it didn't matter what group it was, he didn't get paid, he would just be happy to speak. And I remember thinking that to myself, okay, I've got to take that sort of medicine and get out there. If I want to be a professional speaker, if I want to actually make a career of this, you can rehearse all you like, but you've actually got to get on the stage and do it. So I think that's the key thing is, and it's a cliche, but it's a truism. What have you got to lose rather? If it's the status quo. So in other words, if the worst that can happen is someone says no or rejects you or whatever, you're no worse off. And I know that's obvious, but once you actually get into that mindset, and what I find also is that if you do something for other people, right? So take Tom Peters just as an example. I met Tom at this thing. I said to chatting away, I'd read all of his books, and I was able to quote specifically something from one of his books to him, and he expanded on the point. And my sense is he was I think he was a bit chuffed that I actually was quoting something specifically. And that wasn't my intention. I was genuinely interested it was to do with his idea of the evolvement of mankind into womankind, and actually it's women who are the power force in the world today. And I totally subscribe to that. Actually, I think that's perhaps for another day. Anyway, the point is, I then mentioned to Tom, oh, I've written a book. Have you got a copy on you? And I'm kicking myself. Why didn't I carry a copy with me? Anyway, as long as I got it biked up to where we were, gave it to him, and he was kind enough to write me a note afterwards, saying, oh, I read that, I really like that. Da, da, da. Well, it's seizing the opportunities when they're presented, and look, I could tell you hundreds of other moments where it hasn't worked. I'm only going to tell you the ones that have.
Yeah, tell me the good ones.
I mean, Peter Knight's list of rejections. Well, I could start at Winslow Rugby Club disco, age 14. I mean, I had quite a few there, and many others. So there's a long history of and I think Josh Vegan calls this a bounce back ability. When he's coaching people going out on market appraisals, he's got this idea. You're going to lose some; it's inevitable, I suppose. So how do you bounce back, and what's your bounce back ability like? And some people, unfortunately, if they get a knockback, it just takes the wind out of their sails for a day, a week, or longer even sometimes. The best people just go. Josh has this idea. He just goes next, and brings and just bring on the next person. Let's get on with it. Each one is a new opportunity. So that's pretty much, Stephen, I think what I've learned. And it's painful. No one likes rejection. We take it personally. It's all very well saying don't, but we do. So it's not to say I'm not battle scarred, because I am. But I think I've just actually watched a TED talk this morning, a brilliant TED talk about resilience. And one of the key characteristics is where people actually dwell more on their successes than they do on their failures. And actually, the speaker made the point that every one of us has failures. Every one of us. I mean, look, I could talk to you about a business that I set up and lost £500,000 on in about 6 months, believing that I had the Midas touch and everything would work, and I lost half a million on it. And by the way, £500,000 still today is an awful lot of money to me. Don't be under any illusion that I'll be thinking that wasn't a significant amount of money, and I blew it. I mean, in fact, I'll tell you now, we ran an ad campaign. The ad campaign was 250,000, and we got one phone call. One phone call.
It's good going.
Yeah, and so I've made a lot of mistakes and continue to do so, but I've been fortunate enough to also have had some successes. So I think, right, what's the lesson to people? You've got to give it a go. You've just got to give it. You've got to forget yourself in there. Give it a go. It's like you doing this for the first time. I mean, you've been doing this now for quite a long time. You've built up a really great audience. You've got a great fan club, Stephen. My guess is the first time you did it, you were nervous, apprehensive, worried about what would happen, and so on. And by doing it over and over and repeating it and making it the success that it has become. You develop a mastery of it, and then it's incremental improvement, isn't it? How can you tweak this a bit and tweak that a bit, and so on and so forth? And so the key thing is you just got to do it. And we use a review. We use a review process which I've found really helpful in everything I do, called www.ebi. And after everything we do, every event, every meeting, every webinar, we ask ourselves, what went well? We always start with that. What worked well? What was good? What was good about it? Let's note those lessons down for the future. Okay, after that, the second one, what went wrong? Because stuff goes wrong. Like today, I should have checked that my browser, Firefox, would allow StreamYard to be. I didn't. Sorry, that's my fault. So I just presumed it would. I've not used StreamYard before. It's a new medium. I should have checked it. So that went wrong. That's not that. But then the third bit is even better if. EBI is even better if. What does that? So what would be even better? And I think if you adopt that process for everything you do and start to sort of record the hits and the misses and so on, you'll soon build up a picture. So imagine every market appraisal, if that's what you're doing. Every market appraisal, you review yourself afterwards, immediately afterwards. What went well? I really like my opening. I thought that was really good. Okay, what went wrong? Oh, the fee negotiation wasn't great. I stumbled a bit on that. Okay, even better if. Well, even better if perhaps I brought actually some more examples, because halfway through I realised that I've got a couple of examples that would have been perfect. You do this critiquing, and eventually, if you do that every time for every activity, you'll end up in a situation where you're, if not mastery, your performance will improve.
Brilliant. So there's just a few people that have come on. So Hayley Rydell, thanks for watching. Danny Vickery, thanks for joining us. Claire Harvey, thanks for joining us. Steve Mead, thanks for joining us. Edwina comments, after travelling over to London for the last 6 years, I've always made it my business to make sure I meet Peter, who has always thanked me for taking the time to travel over. I've met some amazing people, including Josh Vegan. I always left there with amazing innovative ideas to implement in best property services. This is a result of putting myself out there, not being afraid to ask questions of the fantastic agents I meet, let alone listen to the world-class speakers. Spot on.
That's lovely.
So,
thank you, Edwin. That's really nice. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Can I, again, so another thing that people here that I'm sure can benefit from your wisdom and being the godfather of a estate agency is implementation and action. So, a lot of people will come to your phenomenal events. They sit there, they listen to the best speakers. There'll be loads of stuff they can implement it, and then it just sits in their drawer. So, you've got fantastic people that are at the Property Academy that you hold them very accountable to. We're going to have people here that just find it really hard to action and implement stuff. What tips, again, and advice would you be able to share with them, please?
Okay, so I'm pleased that I included the checklist manifesto, actually, then, Stephen, in my list of books earlier, because that sort of gets into that area. Look, I think ultimately it requires you to have, first and foremost, a clear picture of what it is you're trying to do. And the vast majority of businesses don't. They have a business plan that is just numbers. They've got a profit target, or they've got a transaction number target, or something like that. That's not enough. You've got to create what I call the Everest mission. And I'll show you one here. Here's my example. Right, I have an Everest mission. This is for my business, and it's almost like a 5-year plan, and it's got all the key information on it: our purpose, our mission, our values. What is our competitive advantage? What are the things we need to work on? What are our KPIs? It's got 5 years of metrics and targets. And then on the back of this is what we call the 135 action plan. And that's a tool that one of our speakers, Pete Wilkinson, developed. And it starts with having a 1. That's like an overall, what I call desired result for the year. What do we want to achieve? You break that down into 3 key areas. So you might break that down, for example, you might break it down into sales, property management, new homes, maybe. That could be one thing. Or you could break it down into people, systems, and brand. That's one of the tools we use. Different ways you can do it. And then under each of those headings, under each of those key 3 headings, a maximum of 5 actions over 90 days. And the reason why I think people don't get stuff done is they set themselves unrealistic deadlines in the first place, and they forget that they've got the day job to do. So right now, I'm amazed actually how well you attract an audience, because right now so many estate agents just haven't got 5 minutes to do anything, because they're so rushed off their feet with the volumes of business that are currently being experienced. So it's right now, if you had 3 or 4 projects on the way, let's say, I don't know, reviewing your website or changing your whole branch position or whatever it might be, those projects are probably going to get put on the back burner, because you've just got to deal with the day job. You've got hundreds of people wanting to list and sell and let their properties, and people wanting to view, and all the above. So what we therefore, I think, need to have is 90 days is a long enough period, in my experience, to be able to allow things to sort of slide a bit, but not too much. In other words, there's enough time to get it done. There's enough time for the interruptions to be not to skew the project off course. And by having a maximum of 15 things that you're working on over 90 days, my experience is you'll get the vast majority of them done. But they've got to be broken down into bite-sized chunks. So rather than, let's say, new website, the project might be review the homepage. Break it down just to that as an action. So what one of our other speakers, Chris Croft, calls going granular. And the idea is you go granular, but not too granular. The skill is to know, what size of chunk to bite off at any point in time. And if you find it overly daunting, it's too big. You need to granulate. You need to break it down. And if it's something you can just knock off in a couple of minutes, well, it's probably a bit too small. You need to build it back up again. The other thing that I believe passionately in is a process that I teach our members called weekly planning. And most people, I think, make the mistake of only daily planning, if they even do that. I like to weekly plan. And what that means is that basically I not only have appointments, so today's appointment was clearly in my diary for today, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I have appointments with our members. I had a one-on-one this morning with one of our members. I've got an appointment with Rightmove this afternoon. I'm doing a webinar for them next week, and we're doing a conversation around. So I've got appointments. You'll have those as well. But what I also do, and I tend to do mine on a Sunday morning, is I plan out the time that I'm going to allocate for the various different things that I've got on my projects. So I actually block out time to work on those projects, as opposed to just trying to fit them in. Because if you try and fit them in, you won't. The day job just takes over. And I treat those blocks of time as if they were an appointment. So I don't break them. If I've set aside, 45 minutes to work on our new website, or 45 minutes to work on a new course that we're developing, or whatever it might be, then I treat that 45 minutes as if I would a meeting like this. It's in the diary. I'm going to keep it. Of course, there are exceptions where things happen, but they are truly exceptions. They're not, most weeks they do not get changed. Most weeks those 45-minute slots are kept for the projects that I've identified, and that way round, you get good progress.
Definitely. So I remember, one saying, what gets scheduled gets done. So if it's scheduled in the diary, you're going to do it. Chris Croft was a Gantt guy, I believe. Gantt charts.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I remember you bringing him to Green and Company when we had our retreat in St Albans. I think he came along and he did some work with us from memory.
He's quite a character. He's the only person I've known that's been able to actually record a rap about Gantt charts. And if you Google Gantt chart rap, trust me, it is the only one that comes up. You will find him. So
good.
Yeah, we bring in all these brilliant people, Stephen, because ultimately, business is challenging, and I scour the world to find some of the, not just the big names like the Bob Cialdinis or the Stephen Coveys and people like that, but the Tom Peters. Although we have people like that, but mainly actually brilliant business people that you'd never heard of, but they've developed a fantastic way of time management, like Pete Wilkinson with his 135, or Chris Croft with his project management skills, and many others that we have on our roster. And it's great. I get to learn from these amazing people.
It's fantastic. What a brilliant job. So what things should an estate agency boss leader should be looking to do now? Obviously we're in interesting times, uncharted times maybe. Some people are a little bit, I suppose, nervous, frightened as to what's going to happen shortly when furlough finishes. Should they be recruiting? I know you have the most unbelievable economist, Roger Martin Fagg, who comes on and delivers the most positive news for estate agents ever, which is great. But he's exceptional. And again, I met Roger at Vistage, and he was really helpful for me. So I've got a lot of time for Roger, as I know you have. So, there's loads of concerned agents maybe watching this. Any tips again that you can help with, point them in the right direction as to what they should be doing? You and I are old enough that we've been through a few of these times before.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, Roger isn't always positive. So Roger, in fact, actually, over 20 years I've known him, is probably 15 years of negativity. So his positivity is all the more remarkable. And he called a V-shaped recovery. He called it in March. And we ran a webinar just for our members. And then I decided it was so important. I got him back and did another one for the whole industry and people either chose to take his words or not. He's called the last 3 general elections months before the actual result. He called the Trump victory. He called the last recession. Why? Because he studies things that others don't study. He's a behavioral economist. And what most traditional economists do is they tend to believe that people will follow a logical process. And people aren't logical. In fact, people are the most illogical. And that's what Roger studies. And he studies also. So I'll give you an example. How does he call the retail sales figures in advance? Because normally they're a rear view mirror metric. He calls them in advance. How does he do it? He checks warehouse space availability at our ports and docks and airports. Because basically, if the warehouses are all full at the ports and docks and airports, what that means is that retail sales are low, and therefore they're having to stockpile at the point of entry. If warehouse space is abundant, what it means is that the stuff's coming in, it's going straight out to the retailers, online or physical, and it's going out. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? How did he call China's massive decline in manufacturing output? Because the Chinese, I'm afraid, do have a habit of propaganda in terms of their figures. Well, he monitored electricity consumption. China is a manufacturing nation, broadly, and therefore it needs electricity. If electricity consumption is up, then they're making more stuff. If it's down, they're making less. And therefore, he monitors. I mean, it's obvious when you hear this stuff, and he monitors hundreds of different things like this to be able to give an opinion, including a state agency, which is why he and I get on so well, because I'm his barometer of matters of state agency. And he called the V recovery straight away. Now, look, we've got a lot of uncertainty, but there's always been a lot of uncertainty. It's just at the moment the media are having a field day, aren't they? Let's think, they've got so many things that they can find that's wrong with the world that they're absolutely gorging on misery and tales of. And there are people who should know better, quite frankly, in my opinion. We saw all these expert forecasters forecasting 10, 20, even 30% price falls this year. I mean, they should hang their heads in shame, quite frankly, in my opinion. And at the very least, they should issue an apology to everybody for their misguided communications. Well, I've got that off my chest. But the key thing, Stephen, is the key words that ring in my ear. I was very lucky to coach not only the Green & Co team for many years, but also the Romans team at about the same time. And Dale Norton, the founder of Romans, was one of the best, if not the best estate agent I've ever known. And Dale always used to say this: every market makes a market. He said the thing is, though, you need to know which market you are in. So there's always an opportunity out there, but you've got to apply yourself differently depending on the marketplace you're in. So right now, I had a conversation with one of our members this morning. She's got a relatively new business, and her pipeline is way beyond her expectations. I mean, it's absolutely so fantastic. And I said, I want you to squirrel a third of it away and not touch it. I want you to put it away, because sure as eggs, you're going to need that cash at some point in the near future. I don't know when it'll be. It might be 3 months, 6 months. I don't know. No one knows, right? People purport to know, but they don't know. No one knows. But what we can be confident of is that if we have a boom, at some point there'll be a bust, and there'll be a so-called normal flat line, and everything in between, because that's the way life is. So plan, on the basis for what is round the corner. Give yourself some wiggle room, build in some buffers, and make sure that you are reading the market. And we've got more indicators now to be able to read the market, Stephen, than we've ever had. The data that's available is extraordinary. The analytics on your websites and various other tools that you've got are amazing. We never had any of that back in my day. So the trouble is, people are either lazy, or they're incompetent, or they can't be asked, quite frankly, or they'd rather just almost shoot from the hip as if that somehow that makes them feel better. Whereas if they were to properly analyse all of these metrics and look at it, they could forecast what's going on in their businesses and what's going on in the marketplace. And Rightmove, I mean, look, I'm biased. Rightmove have been amazing partners for us on so many different levels I have a bias, and I think that they've actually been extraordinary in what they've delivered to the industry. And that might not make me any friends here today by saying so, but that's how I feel. Rightmove, if you actually work with your account managers, will give you insights and data that are really, really valuable. And a lot of our members have taken this to heart, and they now actually have monthly catch-ups with their account manager to see exactly what's going on their patch, wider areas, which particular demographics, and so on and so forth. So there's a huge amount of data available. And what that enables you to do is like a weather forecaster, is to be able to say, okay, a storm is arriving. I don't know if it will hit us or not, but it's on the horizon. We better therefore take precautions in case of. Or, hey, actually, sunny days are ahead, actually. Let's hope they do come our way. Let's prepare accordingly. So it's just about getting yourself in your business adjusted to looking for the signs ahead of them. And don't worry about stuff you can't influence. What's the point? I've got no idea about Brexit. I've got no idea what happens after the stamp duty. I've got no idea what's going to happen with the trade negotiations, and I can't influence those things. But I can influence what I call control the controllables. What are the things you can actually make sort out? What can you do? And take control of those things. And you know what? With a fair breeze, you'll get through just about most circumstances.
Brilliant. So funny enough, before you mentioned Dale's name, I've written it down to ask you, because I was going to talk about every market makes a market, and you beat me to it.
Sorry.
But no, don't be silly. What made Dale so exceptional in your eyes?
Okay, so I was just plugging my temporary device back in, so I don't run out of juice, Stephen.
Thank you.
Dale exceptional? It was okay. It's a combination of things. So first and foremost, Dale is the best implementer I have ever met. So David Pollock was one of the joint two best people I've ever met, and I'm sure you'd concur with that in terms of he was extraordinary as a people person, and that's a great skill to have. But Dale Norton got things done, and I remember Dale speaking at one of our events, and I asked him the question, what was it that made Romans so successful? And he said there was no secret formula. He said we just did stuff. He said, very bluntly, he said others talk a good game, but they don't do it. So that's number one. The second thing that Dale had was he had a great team that was balanced team at its peak. I mean, it changed, but at its peak, Romans had a balance, and it had a balance of people who were creative and imaginative, and a balance of people who were great implementers. And I do believe that people. I wrote, in fact, on my 4i this week about so-called unicorns, people who are both great hunters and farmers, but like unicorns, they don't exist. In a state agency, if you're any good, you're either a hunter or a farmer. You can do both, but you'll be better at one than the other, a lot better at one than the other, in my experience. So I think what made Dale really, really great, and also Dale had a very, very can-do approach. Peter Jackson was similarly. Peter Jackson didn't have a skeptical bone in his body. Pete Jackson would his starting point would be, how can we make this work? Not, what are the problems with it, or we've tried that before and it didn't work. His starting point was, I love it. Let's see if we can make it work. Often it didn't. We couldn't make it work. But his starting point was, let's see if we can. So people like that tend to have a mindset which is, let's see if we can do it. Richard Branson wrote a book called Screw It, Let's Do It. And I think it's in that same sort of genre of, come on, we can make this happen if we want to. If it's important enough and big enough, let's make it happen. So that's probably what was. This relentless, Dale wrote everything down, and he made sure everybody else did. He had a system called the DOT system, which amuses some people, but it was the foundation of Roman's success. Every time an action was identified, you had to make what's called a dot in your day book, and only when the dot was finished could you fill it in. And you had this sort of joyous moment of all your dots being filled, and then you could go home whatever time that was. And that's what actually separated Dale and Romans at their peak. I mean, it's a different business now; it's much more corporate, much bigger, and it's got some very talented people in it, but when Dale was running it, I reckon that was when it was absolutely at its peak.
Good. Well, look, I'm very conscious of time, so can I ask you a couple more questions?
Of course you can.
Thank you. Well, I could be here all day, Peter, because I absolutely love speaking to you. So a couple of questions that have come in. Where do you see the opportunities for estate agents in the UK over the next 5 years?
Okay, so the biggest opportunity, which I've been discussing with several of our members, is I think that we've got to get into this idea that actually we need to be useful other than at the point of transaction. What do I mean by that? The frequency of transaction is diminishing. So tenants now, on average, are, let's say, 2 years. I've got members like Spencer Lawrence at Paramount. the average tenancy length is 48 months. And he has 1,500 properties in his portfolio, so it's a reasonably large size. People are staying put for longer. Average moves, length of time. So we build that relationship, and then we basically don't develop it further. So I think what we've got to be looking at is how can we have relationships on an ongoing basis, and that's a whole raft of different services, financial services for one, but also I think property management, not only for landlords but also for homeowners. Right now I've got 25 at least things I want doing to my house. The irony is, if I was a tenant, I'd phone up an agent and say, "Can you get that fixed? Can you get this sorted? Can you do the other?" Well, why couldn't you as a property owner? So I've been banging the drum that I think that property management is a new opportunity for agents to exploit. So that's one area, making yourself useful other than at the key moment of the transaction. The other, if you really want to get profitable at this moment in time, there's one very simple formula. That's you've got to get your fees up. And on average, our members have been increased. Pretty much every one of them has increased fees during the lockdown period, and it's typically between a quarter and a third. And there's still further room to go in that area. So the simplest way of making more money and improving your business is to increase fees. And we'll be talking about that. Sorry, I'm plugging away. We'll be talking about that.
Keep on plugging. It's worth it. It's worth it. So anybody watching now or replay, if you haven't got your tickets yet, go to eamasters.co.uk and get your tickets, because every single one I've been to have been exceptional. The speakers have been exceptional. Peter Knight isn't too bad himself when he comes up on stage, but you will learn loads and loads and loads.
Thank you. Well, we've managed to get the price point under 50 quid this year, being as it's virtual, and it was 299 last year, so it's quite a big difference. Anyway, look, enough of that. You asked about Dale. What was amazing about Dale? He got things done. I'm sorry, I wish I could say there was a magic sort of potion that he developed. It was just that he did stuff and got stuff done, and that is the key thing that differs, I think. And he brought people in. I mean, he brought myself in, various others. He realised that he needed others to help him to implement, and similarly with David, Stephen. David was surrounded by talent. Yourself and Shane and others. Ricky and many others. Michael, some really amazing people in that business. But he brought in others from the outside because he realised that you guys had the day job to do, and therefore on projects and things, it was enabling for him to be able to have resources that he could bring in to assist. And and two great businesses, Romans and Green and Co. Two of the best businesses I've worked with, and enjoy and actually really enjoyed, because you guys, as with Romans, you thrived on getting stuff done as well, and you wanted to implement the things, which was really, there's nothing worse than going to a company, getting people really enthused and returning a year later and they haven't done anything. I mean, it's horrible. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, so final question. Thank you. So if you were starting off again today, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
I would. So it starts with a mindset, and it's. I would, back to that idea of bounce back ability. I know that there are going to be some tough times. I would enter in with a spirit of this is going to be a roller coaster ride, and it always will be, I think, for everybody. That's number one. So it's a mindset attitude. In other words, rather than, oh my God, how could this possibly happen to me? Almost, how on earth has it not happened to me yet? If things are going well. So it's a change of mindset in that respect. The second thing I'd do is I'd absolutely keep focused. Too many people chase shinies. They chase rainbows. They get themselves distracted. They try to do too many things. There is a time to diversify. There is a time to expand into other things. But start off, whether you're sales or lettings, just start off doing those really, really well before you diversify into other areas. And the third thing I'd do is what Dale Norton calls squeeze the lemon. A lot of businesses, it's been a vanity thing. How many branches have you got? How many outlets have you got? It's just a vanity thing. As Dale would say, I'd rather have one branch doing 1.5 million than 4 branches doing 300 grand. And and every Romans business, every Romans branch was geared up, sales and lettings, to get well over 1 million, and many of them combined were doing 2 million plus out of a single office. And I think that's what you've got to start thinking about. Is rather than having this vanity thing of how many offices have you got, actually, how can you squeeze the lemon on the business that you got? So those would be the big things for me, Stephen. I think if I was starting again, of all of them, I think probably the focus is the most important. Keep it really laser-like focused in the early years. Don't get distracted. Don't go chasing those. Those. I was with somebody yesterday, and she was talking to me about her office and how they typically list around the 300, 400,000 mark, and yet in her area there are properties at 1.5 to 5 million, and she'd love to have some of those. I did a land reg search and found that last year 14 properties had sold for over 1.5 million on her patch, whereas in her price point there were 331 completions. Don't go chasing the rainbows. It's just when you've got so much potential there. So it's things like that. That focus, I think, is probably the most important thing.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that we worked out technology and we got there. And also it's a lesson for me as well. Maybe I should have practiced with you beforehand to make sure it worked. But this is what life's all about. For anybody watching it, 8th of October.
Yeah, 8th of October, eamasters.co.uk. And look, if anyone's got any questions, Steve, and if this provokes any further questions, if anybody wants to, obviously by yourself as you wish. If they want to contact me directly, I'd be very happy to answer any questions that anybody's got. And as with yourself, yeah, we have a commercial business, but we're also here to help where we can in the industry, and I'm very, very pleased to work wherever I can. So thank you very much indeed for having me today and for inviting me on the show. And well done with all that you're doing. And thank you to anybody who's watching this live or is watching it on catch up. And I hope it's been helpful.
Well, it certainly has. I'm very grateful that you said yes and you came on here. So thank you. And it goes to show if you don't ask, you don't get. So, again, that's a story. So I have to find my hemp book, send it to you and get it signed and sent back here now. Michael Nettleson says thank you. I'm really grateful. I am looking forward. I'm sure the event will be even better than all your other ones, and that's going some because they've always been exceptional. So thanks very much. Next week, I am interviewing Damien Hughes, who does the High Performance podcast with Jake Humphries, and he's interviewed loads of phenomenal guests. So going to get his learnings from the guests he's been interviewing as well. We've also got Ryan Wolfenden from Leader Fox, who's going to be talking about his isolation exploits, reading John McGrath's book You Inc. and all the lessons he's got from there, which is an exceptional book. Thank you all for watching now or on replay. Have a really productive Thursday afternoon, great weekend, and remember, EA Masters, 8th of October, get those tickets. Thank you all very much.
Cheers. Bye.